Feminism has stared down the wrong path. Modern feminism is upheld by social media. With this comes power, where the apps can give people platforms to speak their opinions. But not all of these opinions should have this platform. The female societal standards have drastically changed. We no longer treat it as a female disadvantaged society, it's now both men and women who can succeed in life. Feminism started as the change of gender roles, to allow women to be more fairly involved in society by moving away from traditional gender roles of a nuclear family. Fourth wave feminism is a feminist movement that uses predominantly social media to highlight its issues, largely focusing on topics such as sexual abuse, intersectionality, and the marginalized groups within feminism. The Me Too movement, for example, expressed the prevalence of sexual abuse and rapes in society. Social media has created a shift of gender roles, making many traditionally masculine and traditionally feminine topics less sensitive and more openly discussed. There have been some issues that arose due to this change of gender roles, where these women decide that some things are wrong to be done by men because of traditional gender roles, which is exactly what we have been trying to move away from. Let's start with the relationship of men and women. To create equality, we must make both genders treat each other equally. And throughout time, there has been a societal standard to treat women with more care. Now, women do not want to be put onto a pedestal, calling men like the simps or white knights. The idea is to remove this dynamic to allow women to be treated as equals. But what happens when men really treat women as equals? There is an imbalance. Men treating women as equals is seen as negative and not neutral, whereas women treating men as equal is seen positively or neutral, thus creating a strong social expectation to treat women better than men. A thesis coming from the University of Waterloo stated the misperceptions of men's benevolent and hostile sexism. This study concluded that men who showed signs of low benevolent sexism were seen as more sexist than the most hostile sexist men. They were seen as worse fathers and husbands and more likely to perpetrate domestic violence. These men that showed signs of benevolent sexism without stating that they were motivated by gender equality were assumed to indicate misogyny. This study showed that when men reject things like chivalry, being protective, or giving women special treatment, people often perceive them as hostile. On the other hand, when women showed these same signs, they were assumed to have egalitarian values behind them. Treating women equally is often seen as negative. It's seen as misogynistic or sexist, illustrating that women have unspoken female privilege in social interactions. Mainstream media has created a narrative that women don't have any privilege, but this study points otherwise. This misperception highlights that there's a strong social expectation for men to give women more than they give men, which ultimately brings us back to the traditional gender roles of a man being the breadwinner and the woman as the prize. Within the last few years, men have been trying to change these societal standards. This is not an issue in itself, but it's the reaction that is the problem. It has become a trend to join in on the hate train of men. You can see this online when women will react or respond to men posting themselves, being or doing something perceived as feminine, and the woman will react with frustration or even disgust. These trends have only damaged feminism and created more inequality and sprouted more hate. For so long, men have been perceived by the system as the one who goes to war and don't have emotions. And now that these stereotypes are trying to be broken, just like when women broke their own, but now men are being treated with much different reactions. Being a man and asking for help or admitting you had problems was not a thing. It was death for men. You would be called gay or insulted and stripped of your masculinity by all of your peers. This has begun to change. There is now men showing they have weakness and trying to gain emotional intelligence. For all of modern history, men have not talked about their feelings. It has been almost a taboo topic across men's conversations. It showed weakness, which was not accepted by society, as men had to be strong and protective. Therefore, something like this had no place there. 80% of suicides are by men. This is largely due to this right here. Men do not want to talk about their own feelings, so they resort to this. However, the gears are starting to move. We're starting to challenge these values. 300 years ago, men had to be cold-blooded killers, and women were to be taken care of by men. But as you can tell, we're no longer cavemen. We don't need these evolutionary roots for our gender roles. Women have diverted from their traditional gender roles. Now men are starting to do this, yet women are unhappy. Men are often criticized not to be in touch with their feelings, and so they have started to evolve to understand themselves more. But whether men are emotionally intelligent or not, it seems there's always a group of women dissatisfied. The sassy man apocalypse is a joke online that shows men being emotional or sassy, and usually women reacting with discontent. In jokes, there's always a sliver of truth, and I believe in this one there is more than a sliver. Often in these posts, the man is doing something quite menial and exhibits totally normal reactions. Then women go on to mock them, as it's not how a man should act. They are placed in the same criteria they were under just 50 years ago, where if a woman stepped out of line, they would be punished by society. These women ridicule the men for trying to break the standard and becoming more in tune with their emotions. They're not happy with how the men have developed into more vulnerable and emotional beings. This implies that women want men to return to being objectifying animals that have nothing of real value in their mind. You can also see this in similar trends, where a woman will complain that a man has done something with feminine connotations, and then say men used to go to war, or that it gave them the ick. It creates this idea that women want to keep finding new ways to keep men from progressing, but make sure it doesn't hinder them. With these online female presences growing, this issue has become much more concerning. It suggests women want to pick and choose where their equality lies. They want to be equal with men, but not go to war. They want men to understand them, but not understand their own emotions. It's a paradox, thus creating a big issue of misandry. Due to this, men have gone in two directions. First being the evil route, where they go down dangerous pipelines that change how they view women and society, often leading them down to violent and extremist ideas. This happens more than one might think. Many school shooters, serial killers, cannibals, serial rapists would fall into this category. Men show vulnerability, then they are shut down by women and decide to take their anger out on other women or other people. The second route being a little more reasonable. Men are devolving. We had a small window in time where men were moving away from their traditional gender roles, just like in that one Fast and Furious scene with Paul Walker and Vin Diesel. But now, someone put the video in backwards. We are returning to traditional gender roles. This comes in men being much more cautious and reluctant to show their feminine sides to others. These hateful comments have chipped away at their ego. They are now more afraid to show their true feelings and weakness to others. All of the years creating this gender equality are slipping through our hands as women pick and choose traditional gender roles however they want. I have made these statements that women are doing this to create hate and spread misandry, but I think it's an issue that is systematized, and I'm not necessarily blaming them. In a lot of social situations, women have become privileged, and what I mean by this is that in certain social aspects, women have been given an advantage that men don't have access to. Society, and especially women, have become used to this. A lot of these privileges have been around for many years and have even survived feminism. For example, in bars or clubs, women are given free entry while men must pay. This largely stems from traditionalist sexist values where women are seen as commodities. However, we have largely moved away from this, so this view is less relevant. In this sense, women have the privilege to be able to enter for free or skip queues. Establishments are starting to change this. They are charging women for entries and making them wait in lines, which, if you think about in a general sense, having to pay for a ticket or to enter somewhere and waiting in queues is a pretty standard part of our society. But this has caused uproar in these communities. Women are used to having much easier access and not having to pay. And now that this has changed, they have created this notion that the clubbing scene is now dead. Thus bringing me to my point. To privilege equality is oppression, meaning that women are now equal to men in this regard. They must wait in line and pay for entry. But they are upset about this. They're equal, yet they feel oppressed. This is because they have been privileged. Once you are used to having an advantage, not having it seems like having a disadvantage, even if you are on the same level as everybody else. There are plenty of examples of social situations of this similar phenomenon. Women still behave like they have their own advantage, yet they have lost it. So when they are treated with equality, they feel persecuted. For some of these examples, there is ulterior reason as to why this privilege exists, but it largely stems from traditional gender roles that have survived the rise of feminism. I believe that this is a large reason as to why a lot of hate has appeared online around men's change. It's rooted in women having the privilege of being the emotionally intelligent one, which by societal standards have been deemed as feminine traits. But now that men are trying to change this, this privilege is starting to lose its grip. Another trend that has added fuel to this fire is the performative male. But now the issue comes from the man. The performative man is a man who reads feminist literature, is overly caring, and acts in feminine ways. It arises from the group of men that cosplay as feminists in order to pursue women. They are acting this way in public as their performative self, and it's not their real self. How this trend is shown online is almost as a mockery as to how unrealistic it is for a man to have these traits, to be in touch with themselves, to be a feminist. With this, we create an even bigger gap between men and women, as men are perceived to joke about being caring about gender equality, as if it is an out of the world idea that men could possibly care about a woman's issue, further highlighting that feminism is not taken as seriously as it should be. It's an issue that at its core affects everyone, yet a lot of men do not care about it. When this trend was made, it probably wasn't made to mock how men are so far from being feminists, but it does come off that way. Caring about the environment, come on dude, that's for pussies and women. That's the kind of message you get from it, and it's not exactly helping society move forward. We can see this in anything that involves supporting new ideologies, rallies, protests, even showing online support. It's predominantly driven by women, and not just feminism. Wars, gender equality, children's safety, women simply care way more, and it's something that is underseen by everyone. We often see much more women participation in this than men. This is due to the developed emotional intelligence of women, but this can even be seen in gay male communities. It's the heterosexual man that is left out of this emotional intelligence. This comes from men not being able to have deep or meaningful conversations. For a long time, men have not delved into their own psyche much, less discuss it with others, and it's this emotional intelligence that allows for empathy with the victims in these issues. This is a lot to take in, but I wanted to outline how men and women are both responsible for the creation of these societal issues. Maybe this sounded like me hating on women for 15 minutes, or maybe it didn't. I hope you at least get one message from this. It's that society itself is a fragile concept that is upheld by our values, and we should strive to keep these values to protect the base of society, which is us. And by allowing for these trends to mock the other sex, we are simply getting nowhere.